Hello and welcome to the channel. My name is Kubeir. Just in case you did not know that, I am a CICC licensed immigration consultant. This channel is all about Canadian immigration news, updates, things you should do, things you definitely should not with your Canadian immigration application. And this week has been very exciting. Obviously, there was so much of news, so much of hype, so much of expectation with regards to the new TR to PR program, which obviously, we have been saying for the last 9 months that it doesn't have a logical uh, explanation of happening, but we still had our hopes pinned to it because that's what we are, right? Sometimes silly, sometimes not so silly, but forever hopeful. And the expectation was there, and we wanted to sort of see something happening in that regard. However, as Canadian immigration continues to be, as IRCC continues to be, as the political influences continue to be, it was a damp squid. But they did release a 39-page document. Usually I don't print these, but this one I had to print because I wanted to sort of read through this word by word to understand exactly what's being said. And to be honest, I have found a few things which can be very interesting, which we're going to discuss today. In the meantime, we will also talk about the draws, whatever is happening in the field of immigration otherwise, and also give you the information of what's happening with the backlogs. Without further ado, let's get rocking with this. Starting with our quote of the week. Do not spoil what you have by desiring what you may not, what you have not. Remember that what you now have was once among the things you only hoped for. This is an amazing quote by Epicurus. And it's so true, isn't it? I mean, we are always hoping for something more, desiring something more, and sometimes feeling bad because we do not have what we are hoping for, sometimes forgetting that what we now have is something in the past which we were only praying, desiring, and hoping for. So just be thankful, have that feeling of gratitude. And as I say, if you live with the attitude of gratitude, there will always be happiness about. Moving about from there, Canadian Immigration Weekly Roundup. Stay up to date with us. Today's topics of discussion, as usual, would be the PNP updates. A remote draw, I don't think there was one. The last one was on the 8th, but we'll talk about it. Other news, and then from there on, question and answers if we still have time for today. Starting with the PNP draws, September 20th, Ontario came back into action. They issued invitations to apply for 823 candidates in the master's graduate stream. The minimum score was only 33, which is pretty good. For the year 2022, Ontario can only issue 9,750 nominations. I know a lot of people who received their invitations or notifications of interest in the month of February under the Human Capital Priorities draw are still waiting. They're still expecting that news to come out for the nomination. However, fingers are crossed to see if there are going to be any Human Capital Priorities draw. I know a lot of you are waiting for that, but we need to absolutely see which way they will be playing that one out. Ontario also conducted another draw on the 23rd of September, this time for the French-speaking skilled workers stream. 363 invitations were issued for this, and the lowest CRS score was only 326. Of course, as usual, they did target specific occupations who could then basically be invited under this particular stream. For more information, obviously, you can check the Ontario's website. But now that they have gone back and brought or rather conducted the draw for the French speaker stream, the hopes are really high with the expectation that there could be a draw for the Human Capital Priorities. As I just said, fingers crossed. On the 21st of September, British Columbia also invited, again, there are usual suspects, so they always invite they could pretty much be like a Swiss clock, right? I mean, they're on the dot. They always conduct their programs. They always conduct their draws every single week. And this time they have invited more than 352 candidates. Mostly were invited through the targeted draw or the tech occupation. So people who do not know, then British Columbia, for most of their programs, except one, would need a job offer from an employer in BC. The Northwest Territories are also now tying into the Francophone streams, and they have now a Francophone stream, which is a permanent residence program for French speakers with a job offer in the Northwest Territory. So it's not only enough that you're a francophone, you also need a job offer. But if you fancy a trip up north in the Northwest Territories, then that could be the province for you. Well, it is still pretty, it's still beautiful, it's still fantastic. I haven't been there. I've seen a lot of pictures. One of these days, probably need to take a trip down there, not down there, trip up there. But if you are a francophone, if you do are able to get a job offer from that province, then this could be the ticket for you. Now, the good news for the travelers who are coming to Canada is that Canada is ending its COVID vaccination and testing requirements effective 30th of September. And that would also mean the Arrive Can app, which was very glitchy and sometimes not sure what exactly the purpose was, but that will also become optional. So there you go. All COVID restrictions are now almost technically out of the window, and you can now travel freely. There would be no requirement of any vaccination certificates or any vaccination requirements. In other news, and of course there is always other news, and it's the other news which we are more excited about. Starting with, let's see if I can pull this up. Yes, backlogs. The backlogs are, I mean, they didn't, when I'm saying the backlogs are back, I wanted to say backlogs are back. They didn't really go anywhere, right? The backlogs are still staring at us. They're still looking scary as usual. But for the first time, after a very, very long time, they have now reduced instead of growing. They are now dropping when we say data to data or month to month kind of a comparison from July to August. Now we have the August data available. So from the month to month data aspect, the backlogs are decreasing. So they have decreased from 2.7 million to 2.6 million, 100,000 difference there. But what can I say? I mean, any drop is a good news here at this point of time. So as you can see, June we were at about 2.4 million. July we went up to 2.7 million. Then we have dropped now to 2.6, which is 2.583, or you're going to call it 2.6 million. Yes. In the line of businesses, the permanent residence applications, or rather the people who are in the backlog, have reduced. So you have to take it into perspective, also keeping in mind that though the numbers are looking lesser, the numbers have reduced. During the period of this time, many more people also got added to the processing queue. And therefore, the numbers sometimes that you see may not be a very big difference, but in its entirety, you have to understand that many more people also got added to the processing queue by way of their application. So the growth, or rather the difference, is significantly more versus what is just visible here. So for permanent residents, as of now, as of 31st of October, you have 513,923 people who are in the backlog. Under the temporary residents, you have 1.7 million people there. Still, that number is really, really huge. Citizenship, the number is now reducing. It's at 371,000. Hopefully, that numbers would drop further. In the express entry, and I'm sure most of you are more interested in that aspect. As of July 15th, it was 5,195. As of 31st of August, now it's 5,214. And just let me... Federal skilled workers from 18,127 has now dropped to 11,669. So that's a big number drop there. About 7,000 people were cleared there. And then skills trade is from 369 to 299. So not a big difference there. But again, the backlogs are clearing. Applications are getting cleared out. And as of now, it's only 17,182. So looks like IRCC has managed to achieve what they have been saying. And Sean Fraser had, in the last, I think whenever he came out and spoke about it last, said that by the end of this year, they expect all these backlogs to be cleared. So overall, from the looks of it, it's not looking bad now as it was looking earlier. So express entry has decreased from 23,691 to 17,182, which is good, not bad at all. The family class inventory, of course, you got to take a look at that as well, because sometimes, there are a lot of spousal sponsorship applications which are also troubling so many of you out there. By and large, parents and grandparents at this point of time, 53,000. Family relations under HNC, 2,764. Children and other family class, 8,800. But spouses and partner is at 61,000, bringing the total in the backlog as of 31st of August to 125,746 people. Big number, to be very honest. But from what I know, and Obviously, we are seeing with the applications that we are processing for our clients, the processing time has actually come down. When I'm saying come down, it's still on the average of about 12 months that they are, and they are actually achieving 12 months target for most applications. I know there will always be applications which they cannot sort of clear out in 12 months, but then those will have certain aspects or issues to it. But by and large, most of the applications are getting cleared out within the 12 months period. Inside the 12 months period, uh, the people who are applying inland inside Canada, and if the applications are pretty simple, straightforward, then those are getting processed. My fastest one has been inside 4 months. So that's pretty cool. And also, effective yesterday, 23rd of September, IRCC has started digitizing all their business lines of applications. So, I mean, it's a staggered process. Not everything is happening online yet, but it has started from the 23rd and it will go on right until the end of October. So from yesterday onwards, all spousal sponsorship applications are now online. Paper application is no longer an option. And with that happening, it's expected that the processing time will also get faster. We have also discovered that they have this green bin strategy that was obtained through some ATIP notes. Now, this green bin strategy basically is that if you are applying for a spousal sponsorship, and now it is also happening for some other application types, then they have a green bin and a standard bin strategy whereby the system, and by the use of artificial intelligence, if they're able to identify that the application is pretty simple, straightforward, and has adhered to some about 32 checkpoints, then the system automatically allocates that application to the green bin, or rather it is triaged to the green bin, and from there on the processing is pretty quick. The system doesn't make the decision, but it does prompt as to all the processing, or rather all the boxes being checked, versus an application having any kind of boxes that it doesn't check, and hence it goes into the standard bin, whereby it will go through the regular processing stream, which could then take a bit of time, not always a very long time, but let's say the average 12 months processing. So these are a bit of a differences, and hopefully with this digitization, we can see the processing times improving. Systems continue to have glitches, and we all know we're all getting irritated, frustrated, upset with the systems the way they are. Sometimes you start wondering, right? I mean, is this really the first world country we're talking about? Is this really a country with a system which they should be able to, at least revamp at the earliest? But we are living with it. Express entry, for example, you can keep logging in, and sometimes you just don't get to the required screen, and you keep refreshing, and you keep clearing your cookies and cache, and you keep checking a different browser, and still you are on the same frustrating login screen, which doesn't allow you to get through. So I'm hoping with this new digitization process, they have cleared out, or they have sorted their glitches, so that people can have a smooth experience with their application. Otherwise, as it is, there are so many confusions: which form to sign, which form not to sign, which form is going to have a digital signature, which form you still need to sign in spite of it having a digital signature, because a small mistake on a spousal application could basically mean the application is returned back as incomplete or rejected as cancelled. And then you got to start again, and then it takes on more time, and therefore it becomes a bit stressful. But apart from that, digitization looks like a good idea, and hopefully should get us our applications getting processed sooner rather than later. All right, in other news, what do we have in other news? Well, that is the hot topic for today: the 5 pillars, the strategies to PR. And again, I wish I had that screen open, but it'll take me some time. So what happened was, on the 20th of September, which was technically the first day, official day of Parliament being in session. Obviously, with the Queen passing away, there were some delays earlier. So for people who do not know, a little bit of background there. Motion M44 was tabled by Hardeep Sarai, who was a Parliament member of Parliament from Liberal, and that got a unanimous approval, and was accepted. It then basically gave Sean Fraser and IRCC 120 days to come up with a program, with a plan, based on the recommendations of Motion M44, which had basically 6 different points. Now, in my uh, previous videos, we have discussed that at length. I mean, I don't want to sort of talk about it again, because I think we beat that subject to death. And I would always say that there is no TR to PR, because it made no sense. And everything in that Motion M44 was already covered under so many different aspects. And though, as I said, I did not expect anything, but so much of hype, you always get sucked in. Obviously, you want something good to happen. And all of us were expecting a lot of things, but 20th of September came. There were a couple of tweets made which also were indicative of something nice and something hot, coming out of the fresh out of the ovens. But eventually, when we did get the actual plan, it was, as I said, a damn squib, or a squid if you want to call it, and it didn't really have anything of any substance which would give anybody any hope. For example, for TR to PR, I mean, people were expecting a new TR to PR with regards to how it has been in the year 2021, or something similar, or something at all, but there was absolutely nothing. 39 pages of a document being issued, and I just showed that to you, it's all here. Okay, 39 pages of this document issued, and it was supposed to be indicative of some strategies that IRCC is proposing with response to the motion M44. Now, when you basically read or skim through this, it basically talks about 5 pillars, and we will talk about these 5 pillars. So in its context, it talks about how IRCC proposes to strategize the immigration system, and provide pathways to temporary residents through different processes. In the nutshell, that's what it says, and it says what they've already been doing. We already know what they've been doing. We already know what the Bill C-19. We already know about the new tier system. That is what we already know. We know about the new municipal nominee program that we've been talking about. We already know about the mandate letter where IRCC is considering to expand pathways within the express entry for the international students and foreign workers. What we wanted to see was a concrete plan, concrete pathway. Okay, this is what's going to happen. This is what people need to do to apply, and etc., etc. However, nothing of that sort came. What came was this 39 pages, and but these 39 pages do have some small snippets which give us some very, very important insight and glimpse, and that's what I want to talk to you about. So what I've done with these 39 pages is, while I've read through it, actually I've been through it now 5 to 6 times already. And what I've done is I have cut out some of the rubbish that we are not interested in, or the fluff, if you want to call it. We have removed that, and I've just highlighted lots of aspects which obviously are of a lot of concern for you and for me, and that's what we're going to talk about. Okay, so let's first talk about what these 5 pillars are. And let's see this. The immigration minister has tabled the 5 pillars, and the first pillar is that the government will use the existing immigration targets 2022 to 2024. I mean, we're already coming to the end of 2022, and it is expecting to record the highest number of immigrants that they have brought into Canada. So that was the first pillar. Nothing there. The government will reform the express entry. Now, this is very, very interesting, and this is what we will talk about in detail as I take you through the actual context and pages. Pillar number 3 is saying that IRCC is planning to adopt the NOC 2021, which is the new tier system. Again, we have spoken about this at length before, but we will sort of briefly touch upon this as well. Pillar 4 is about Francophone. So if you are on the fence, still thinking, should I learn French? Should I take French as a second language? Will taking up French will help me or not? And if you still are, or if you are from a French-speaking country and you are a Francophone already, then this was good news, because there would definitely be more options, programs, pathways available as a Francophone within the express entry, as well as within the provincial nominee programs as well. And the 5th one was that IRCC is increasing processing capacity, improving client experiences, and obviously digitizing. So basically, if you can see, a lot of, I don't know what you would call it, a lot of words being used, but nothing of concrete. I mean, nothing much that you can sort of use with. Now, let's see this. Now, let's take a look at this. This is the document, Strategy to Expand Transitions to Permanent Residence. I don't think we need to do this. Okay. And what I've done is I have highlighted in this particular document things that are of importance to you and I at this point of time. So through this strategy, the government will use a 5-pillar approach, which we've already talked about. Pillar 1, it uses the increased immigration levels, which we have spoken about. Nothing much happening over there, because we already know this year is already coming to end. Pillar 2 is what we are interested in, because it talks about the reform to express entry system by increasing flexibility in the immigration selection tools under express entry through recent changes. So basically, it is indicating to Bill C-19, and the next line or the next sentence goes on to saying that it will also respond to the labor market priorities, and increase francophone immigration by selecting more candidates with specific attributes such as in Canada experience. This again indicates to the fact that when they will use the tool or the Bill C-19 tool, if you are francophone, if you have in Canada experience, that could become one category. Okay, so if you're already inside Canada, you are already having Canadian experience, plus you're also francophone, then you can have that as a very big advantage, because that could be one category that would be identified under the Bill C-19 when that comes into play. We'll talk about that, about Bill C-19 coming into play and when that will be effective, because that is also mentioned here. Now, the next one is that the department will also review the comprehensive ranking system criteria under express entry, particularly points awarded for Canadian work experience, education, language proficiency, and job offer. So while there is no specific TR to PR program, somebody says use a microphone. There's a big one here. I mean, I'm not sure how big a microphone do you want me to use, but if this is not working, then I'm not sure what's going to work. Anyways, so department will also review the comprehensive ranking system under express entry, particularly points awarded for Canadian work experience, education, language proficiency, and job offer. And with this, there is, as I said, there will be no TR to PR as people were expecting last year, whereby almost anybody who had completed education, 2 years program, almost anybody who had a job were able to submit an application. So that was like the golden ticket that people got. If people thought something like that was going to come, not coming, but instead what they're going to do is they're looking to review. Now, when they review, does that mean they will definitely increase the points? I don't know. It doesn't say that, but if they're reviewing, means there is a prospect of something like that, something of that sort happening. These changes form the foundation of the next version of express entry. Now, that also is heartening to note that finally there would be a next version, improved version, I'm hoping, but we have to see who gets what out of it. And it will include more opportunities to transition to permanent residence for workers at all skill levels. But again, keep in mind, this is mainly targeting people who are inside Canada, people who have Canadian work experience, Canadian education, and probably a job offer. Pillar 3 talks about making improvements to the immigration economic program. Essential workers in high demand occupations would be targeted. And again, this is happening by use of the tier system, the new NOC 2021. We have already talked about it. 16 occupations which were not already there in the current NOC system have now been included, who will then become eligible for express entry. These were earlier NOC Cs, and I think in some cases NOC Ds. And this would also explore better ways to transition essential workers who are in high demand. Again, also removing barriers for physicians. Now, this removing barriers for physicians is a subject which I will also address a bit later on, but it's not something which a lot of people outside Canada were expecting. A lot of people outside Canada, when they saw this particular aspect, they thought, okay, if you're a doctor or if you're a medical practitioner outside Canada, you might get an advantage. It's not what you think it is. What they're referring to over here is removing barriers for physicians who are already inside Canada and who are working in Canada, but they work for a remuneration model which as of right now slots them as self-employed, because they get paid for fee per service. So they provide a service, they get paid fee for that. And because of that, because they're like self-employed and they come under that, they were ineligible under express entry. So now IRCC has gone ahead and removed that barrier, and this is referring to that. Again, pillar number 4 talks about a new municipal program being developed, which we have been listening to almost for the last 2 years now. And it also talks about supporting Francophone minority communities, and also talks about rural Canada, where more programs will be processed and developed. RNIP, AIP, AgroPilot, and other provinces whose provinces or communities, sorry, not whose provinces, whose communities might be expanded to increase the reach and the number of occupations that they will be able to include. Lastly, pillar number 5 is it's all about processing capacities and improving client experiences and improving or making technological improvements. Now, all these were the 5 pillars, but that's not what this document is about. As I'm scrolling through, now let's see first. They're talking about international students. And this is where I want you to pay big attention to, because this is something which If you are an international student in Canada, then you should really be aware of this. First of all, at the end of 2021, okay, last year, approximately 618,000 international students held valid study permits. So there were 618,000 international students. I'm not saying it, the numbers are from the IRCC document page, so I'm sure the numbers are correct. Then, at that same point of time in 2021, approximately 372,000 post-graduation work permits were also issued. Now, I'm sure there would be some of them who were also holding the valid study permits. If they're holding valid study permits, then they graduated and became, rather, they had the postgraduate work permit. So this number is already roughly 1 million people, roughly. Okay. Add to that, that of these international students and these postgraduate work permit holders, you also have their spouses. They are also eligible for open work permits. So this number of international students and foreign workers or people on postgraduate work permits plus their spouses is near now actually more than 1 million people. Now, if you have 1 million people in Canada who are on temporary resident status and most of who actually want to transition as permanent residents, then no TR to PR program is going to make everybody happy. There can be no TR to PR program which can give solution or option or transition plan to all 1 million people, because Canadian immigration quotas numbers do not allow for that kind of numbers to be added. So this is one thing I want you to keep in mind while we sort of go and talk about something else. No, the yellow highlight says, despite growing in size, the international student population has become less diverse over the past 2 decades, with increased concentration in certain source countries, provinces of studies, and fields of study. So it's indicating of the fact that the whole program of international students has become less diverse. The source countries at this point of time, the main source countries continue to be India, China, Nigeria, Korea, I think, South Korea, and then a couple of other countries. These are the main countries from where the international students come in. Obviously, I'm sure you all know Indians form the big majority of it. Not only that, also the concentration, where they concentrate on which provinces. It's mainly Ontario or British Columbia. Which kind of programs? It's, you see, it's majority of the students will come and want to study project management or international business management. So this is obviously IRCC is aware who's studying what they're doing. And what they're now looking to do is IRCC is exploring, okay, exploring, not implementing, exploring strategies to diversify the source countries for the Canada's international student program, as well as ways to incentivize students to look beyond major urban centers when choosing a program of study. Now, this indicates some changes that will probably come into play at some point of time, whereby study permits will not be as easy as, I mean, it's not easy even now, but they might not be as easy for some countries, for some programs, for some provinces, because they need to now spread it out. They need to make it more diverse. So again, something for you to be aware of and be wary of. Again, as I keep scrolling down, and then in total, 99,653 invitations to apply to the CEC only were issued in 2021, representing 87%. This is just, I mean, I highlighted this basically as a data point for people who are in Canada to understand that just in 2021, 99,000 invitations, almost 100,000 invitations were issued only to Canadian experience class. So on Twitter, when you see so much of uproar, you see so much of frustration, you see so much of anger about so many people saying that it's not fair, that they are, they were not getting an opportunity, they were not given an opportunity. Well, a lot of people were given an opportunity. Through TR to PR, more than 90,000 people were able to make an application. Through CEC, 99,000 people were able to make an application. And at the end of the day, they will never ever be able to provide a solution for every single person who is in Canada as an international student foreign worker. It's never going to happen. So the sooner you realize it, the better it is, because if you realize that sooner, then you will be able to plan and prepare and work around the options that are available to you, instead of hoping and pinning your hopes on a program like this to ever come back again. But as we move on, a dominant and increasing feature of the Canadian immigration system is the extent to which it is deliberately geared towards creating and facilitating transitions between temporary and permanent residency. Again, we're talking about the fact that it's a dominant feature, that they do provide you pathways because they are giving you additional points. If you're in Canada, if you're studying in Canada, you're working in Canada, you get additional points, right? So the largest economic selection programs specifically look to attract and retain temporary foreign workers and international student graduates who have acquired Canadian experience through obviously criteria and points. And therefore, these are the trends that they've been highlighting to say that this is where they get the most of their permanent residents from, people who transition, because most of the PNP programs are also geared towards individuals who are already in the provinces, can get the job offer, have the work experience, have the background, have the education, and therefore this transition will continue. And again, it talks about the numbers, the datas, which most of you, I mean, if you're interested in this datas and numbers, you can always grab a copy of this and go through it. In terms of international students, specifically in 2021, approximately 157,000 of all new permanent residents had previously held one or more study permit. So again, it's a data point, and it says in 2021, 39% people who were transitioned as permanent resident, they held at least one or more study permit during the past, and 88,000 of this transition directly from post-graduation work permits. Again, a data point, but it's important to note these when you are understanding who is getting an opportunity to become permanent resident. Now, this is where it becomes more important. For example, in 2021, there were roughly 444,800 study permit holders and 415,000 work permit holders, highlighting that there are not enough spaces to permit all temporary residents to obtain permanent residence in given year. This, even IRCC is aware, and even they are highlighting that this imbalance that exists between the fact of how many people are going to be there in Canada and how many people can actually become permanent residents, that is never going to match. And therefore, it says it is also important to recognize that temporary residency is granted on its own right, either for studying or working temporarily in Canada. It basically means that when you apply for a study permit, you are explicitly mentioning in your application, in your SOP, that I will go back. I don't want to live in Canada, I want to go back. When you come to Canada on a visit visa, you explicitly say that I'm coming to Canada temporarily. When you apply for a work permit, you are saying, I'm going to work in Canada temporarily, I will go back. All right. So when you are granted those visas, when you are granted those temporary status, it is with the understanding that you are aware that this is temporary, and there is no assurance and there is no promise of giving you a permanent residency pathway. So this is something which you need to understand and accept. Again, moving on, it is important that Canada continues to offer some pathways to attract those with diverse skills, backgrounds, and talent among those who may wish to immigrate to Canada without previous Canadian work experience or study experience. Now, this is for all federal skilled workers. Until now, whatever we've been talking about is for people who are inside Canada, who have Canadian work experience, who have Canadian background. This red highlighted area is the only small portion that indicates and talks about people who do not have Canadian background or Canadian work experience or Canadian education. And it says, in addition, now while they're talking about transitioning all the international students or foreign workers and the pathways, possible pathways, they're also saying it is important that Canada continues to offer some pathways. Okay. Now, it basically then comes to an understanding that this section of the program is not going to be the first priority. It's going to be, I won't say the last priority either. It would be like the options available are going to be lesser and lesser. Therefore, it says it still continues to offer some pathways to attract those with diverse skills, backgrounds, and talents among those globally who may still wish to immigrate to Canada without previous Canadian work experience or study experience. Correct. Now, this is where I want everybody who's out there. If you're a federal skilled worker, if you do not have Canadian work experience, if you do not have Canadian education, then with this particular document itself and with this thing that I just highlighted in red, you should become aware that from here on, or actually not from here on, actually right now itself, it's pretty difficult. I mean, who can get 500 if you do not have, who can get a score of 500 in a CRS in Express Entry if you do not have any Canadian education, work experience, or a job offer? You can't, right? So technically, and with this being highlighted here, it only says, or it only indicates that it's going to be steep hill, even going further. When you when you go into the next year, it's going to get it's going to look more difficult. Now, I know there is Bill C-19, which might come as a saving grace, but even with Bill C-19, I'm going to talk about that in a bit as well. A big chunk, or the big preference, it seems, would be for people who have Canadian work experience, Canadian education, because that is how the categories may be formed, because we do not know how that would be. But again, let's go back to the document while we're still talking about this. The pillar 2, it says, in order to increase flexibility in the immigration system and to better address the labor market, it will be done via Bill C-19. This is the tool that they will use, and they will establish categories of candidates with particular attributes and invite the top ranked among them. Now, this is another point that I wanted to make with you today, was that just because your category is in Bill C-19, let's say they are inviting software engineers, just because they have identified a category of software engineers, it does not mean, or it will not mean, that your CRS score does not matter. So don't give up on your CRS score. It only then means that, for example, so this is how I envision, or this is what my opinion is in regards to how an express entry draw would look, let's say in the middle of next year. Let's say 3,000 people are invited, or 3,000 invitations are issued. Out of 3,000 invitations, about 2,000 invitations would be to specific categories, and the CRS score, highest ranking CRS score cutoffs in those categories, and the remaining 1,000 would be to the general draw in express entry and the top ranking profiles in express entry. But keep in mind what this means. So while the people in those categories might get the benefit of slightly lower CRS score, but then depending on how many of them are in that pool, for example, if knock 2173 is identified as one category, or knock 1111, or knock 1123 is identified as a category and they will say, okay, CRS score of 450, people with the score of 450 and above, knock codes 2173, 1111, 1123 have been invited in this draw. 2,000 invitations were issued if they had Canadian work experience of at least 1 year. Now you see how things have changed. Okay, it's 450, yes. It is not 1111, yes, or 2173 or 1123, but they also want Canadian work experience. So that's where the difference is going to happen. And then they will say, we also have 1,000 invitations issued to express entry, the general draw, blah, 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 no programs specified or all programs included. That basically means remaining 1,000 will go to the general draw as they are conducting right now. But with only 1,000 invitations being issued, only 1,000, and going to the rest of the group, that then basically means the scores are going to be high or remain higher. What will be the opportunities? What will be the chances? So this is something that you have to be aware of. And if you're aware of this, you will be able to plan, you'll be able to prepare better. Because if you will not be able to plan, if you're not aware, then you will not be able to plan. If you're not able to plan, you'll not be able to prepare. And then it becomes a very difficult situation. But let's keep reading through this as to what this further indicates. Where were we? Okay, the department is assessing how best to use the new tool to help meet Canada's labor market needs, including considering selection based on attributes such as French language skills, specific educational criteria or credentials, occupation-specific work experience, working in Canada's, and other ties in Canada. Other ties to Canada would again be siblings, job offer, specific period of time you've spent in Canada. But this is all moving towards people inside Canada, working in Canada, studying in Canada, having relations in Canada, having relatives in Canada, or having some connection there, which will help you get that advantage. Again, as I move forward, and in this document, I have removed all other pages which I did not feel were of real value at this point for this discussion. So I've basically cropped those pages. In blue now, the legislation requires that categories be linked to attainment of an economic goal, that the minister consult with partners, etc. So basically what they're saying is that before they can set up any categories, they will need to discuss that with the stakeholders, and only in consultation with them should they come up and identify these categories. The implementation of these, now this is the most important factor which I want you to understand. In order to identify these categories and in order to sort of make these categories, they will be discussing with so many other stakeholders. The implementation of these new authorities will require changes to the IRCC's IT systems. Excuse me. These changes will again help them design all this, but the text in red, the exact timing of the implementation for this measure has yet to be determined. However, IRCC anticipates these changes being in place by spring 2023. They will be applicable to the suite of programs, including the federal high skill programs managed by Express Entry. What does this mean? Okay, this basically means is that in order to implement the Bill C-19 or the category-based draws or the system to identify the categories, they will need to make some changes, the technological changes to the Express Entry system. In order to make these changes, they will require some time. And these changes within the Express Entry system, these changes that they are proposing will cannot be made before spring of 2023, or if they will need to make them by spring 2023, and that is when the implementation can happen. The exact implementation time has not been announced, has not been decided, but they are expecting that these changes that they want to make into the system can only happen by spring 2023, which basically then goes on to indicate that the tool of Bill C-19, the way they will identify different categories, will only happen spring 2023 or later, not before that. Why that is important? I will tell you why that is important. If Bill C-19 is implemented sooner than later, it then basically means the express entry draws, the way they are being conducted right now, will stop, and a new phase of express entry draws will come out, whereby they would have occupation-based draws, etc., and some other draws. Because only next year, when the parliament goes back into session for next year, at that point of time, in consultation with different stakeholders, they will come up with the categories. Once the categories have been announced, only then will they start implementing them under Bill C-19. All this will require changes, and all these changes will take time. So spring 2023 or later. If you have those extra 4 months, okay, officially spring 2023 basically means 21st of April. That's the official, I think date. Was it 21st of May? I need to check that. Because fall or autumn is 21st of September, winter is 21st of December, summer is 21st of June, so spring is 21st of April. Yes, 21st of April, can't be May. Anyways, so 21st of April, if that is the date, or after that date is when they will implement Bill C-19, means you still have the first 4 months of 2023 for your express entry, regular express entry draws the way they are, which then gives hope to a lot of people who are still in the express entry pool, with the expectation of the scores continuing to drop, obviously hoping or assuming that the scores continue to, or rather IRCC continues to issue as many invitations as they have been. This is a very, very important point, because this will help a lot of people out there plan what they want to do with Canada and Canadian immigration process. With now the expectation being that Bill C-19 would be towards spring 2023, basically means first 4 months, at least first 4 months of 2023 will be towards express entry, the way they are, regular draws, and that would then help understanding how the draws are faring. In the current circumstances, in the current scenario, we expect 480s to be start being called by December this year. I'm not saying 480s being cleared, I'm saying 480s being called. So the draws below 490s should hit by December this year, provided they continue with the invitations that they're issuing, provided there are no gaps, provided there are no pauses, provided there are no other surprises that IRCC may throw up. So there is one expected in November, but let's hope and see that how that goes. But let's move forward with what we have in this text. Okay, again in yellow, the department will share information to ensure the provinces and territories can give informed input and plan for federal government's targeted draw from the express entry pool, in addition to those draws regularly made for candidates nominated under provincial nominee program. Also important is the fact is that based on these category-based draws, even PNPs, even provincial nominations would, or rather those PNPs would also need to now relook or align their programs in a manner where they can take advantage. I mean, if IRCC also starts conducting category-based draws, which provinces are already doing, then provinces do not have any more advantage left, versus the fact that they will further reduce the criterias or requirements or scoring factors, and that would then be the advantage. But apart from that, provinces will also now have to realign their program or have to come up with a different program, which will then help them retain the people in their provinces. The department is undertaking a review of the comprehensive ranking system criteria under express entry, particularly assessing how points are awarded for Canadian work experience and education, language proficiency, and job offer. In this document of 39 pages, this fact of reviewing the points, this fact of how IRCC is looking to review and check the criteria again has been mentioned at least 3 to 4 times, which basically means this obviously has some level of importance, whereby IRCC is definitely looking at reviewing the program, probably coming up with a new version with different points or different criteria with regards to the points given for work experience, education, and language proficiency, and of course the job offer. What else have we got? Now to the green section, the review rules surrounding temporary residence. As part of the review, the department is examining the application of dual intent provisions to clarify how the intent to remain in Canada eventually through one of the permanent resident pathways and requirement to leave at the end of authorized stay are assessed. Now, what happens is, for example, if you're an international student, you wish to come to Canada and therefore you have to express your intention of wanting to leave Canada. Now, when you want to leave Canada, everything you are saying, everything you're stating is all towards the fact that you want to leave Canada. Same thing as a visitor. If you are a spouse of a person who's already in Canada, your again application is all about how you will leave Canada. Everything is surrounded around you wanting to leave Canada. Therefore, this new assessment criteria of dual intent will become very, very important, which will then allow people who are making applications for temporary residence to state how they actually want to live in Canada permanently while making an application for temporary residence, whereby they will leave Canada if their permanent residence application does not go forward and during the period of their temporary residence stay. So this is going to be a very important one. It will help a lot of people whose spouses are currently in Canada and they want to come to Canada on a visit, to study, to work. This is going to make a very, very important difference. And this would also help international students. So as an international student, if you actually want to live in Canada permanently and you're using that study pathway to gain your permanent residency, at this point of time, expressing dual intent doesn't really work in your favor. Never ever will anybody give you that advice of expressing dual intent for a study permit application, because it becomes very difficult to prove. And therefore, if they will review that and they will add some additional criteria over there whereby you can express dual intent as an international student, this is definitely going to help a lot of people make a good application. They are also looking at the possibility of implementing a measure to allow issuance of open work permit to family members, to the family members of all foreign workers in Canada who hold a work permit. So as of right now, only those people who are on a work permit, postgraduate work permit, open work permit, who have NOC skill type 0A or B, only their spouses can apply for an open work permit. Now, this is the provision which basically says that all workers, whether you are a NOC A, B, C, D, then your eligibility would have, you would have an eligibility to apply for your spouse's open work permit, even if it is given for a valid duration of 6 months. That is something that would help for family reunification. And that is again the mandate in the immigration minister, for the immigration minister. And that is also something which is very, very good, something that I am looking forward to, because at this point of time, there are a lot of people who are in jobs NOC C and D, but because they're in NOC C and D, they're not eligible to bring their spouses, and obviously, the families are separated, which is not a good thing. So hopefully, I'm looking forward to this particular measure. I really, really like this one. And as I move forward, there are talks about enhancements to agri-food pilot, and then there is a municipal nominee program, etc., and future of caregiver programming, that they're trying to expedite that process. Nothing concrete mentioned there as well. Again, supporting transitions of international students is all about the same thing, about providing more points in the express entry and the criteria there. And the last thing that in this document that I want to highlight is the department is exploring options for additional pathways to permanent resident for international student graduates, particularly if their education, training, or work experience is relevant to help address Canada's emerging economic priorities. The government intends to work with provinces, territories, stakeholders, Again, it's just a sentence there which says they are exploring. Exploring could basically mean anything. It's not like that they have any specific program that they have in mind at this point of time. But In conclusion, there was no TR to PR program. In conclusion, there is going to be no new TR to PR program. In conclusion, there are a lot of changes that are planned for express entry system. In conclusion, they are reviewing possibility of uh, changing the criteria for express entry system, changing the points that are being awarded to Canadian work experience, Canadian education, job offer, and any kind of relationship that you have with Canada so that it can help you process or progress your pathways into Canada in a faster, better manner. So while there is no TR to PR, I mean, it was never going to be that easy, just the way it was in 2021. What they have done is that they are looking at different ways where people who are inside Canada but are struggling with their low CRS score may still have an option, because these factors would be reviewed, and that would give them an opportunity to then apply under Canadian Experience class or in any other program through the provincial nominee programs. This was the synopsis. This was the summary of this particular document. And that's basically it, I thought. Oh, yes, of course, there is one more thing. Today's stream is going to be a long one. So that was the bill, that was the motion M44 discussion, end of that. There is an advisory from the Indian Embassy, and this basically is in relation to the sharp increase in incidents of hate crimes, sectarian violence, and other activities that uh, India views as being anti-India. And in a lot of these, there are foreign nationals, basically Indians and foreign nationals, and Indian students who may have been involved. Now, the advisory basically is to stay away from these activities and obviously, be cautious about it. But from my side, all I can say is that sometimes emotions can run very high. Sometimes sentiments take over. Sometimes you get misguided. Sometimes you get misled. Sometimes you might uh, you might get carried away with somebody else's comments or emotions. All I will say to you is, I'm not talking about this advisory, and I'm not talking to you about any political aspects. I don't have any political agendas. I do not support anything which basically would be which would be against the law of the land either. What I would suggest, or rather what I would like to sort of say, is that if you're an international student, if you're a permanent resident in Canada, then please abide by the law of the land. If you don't do that, then you can get into some very serious trouble, not only with your temporary resident status, where if you get convicted for any criminal activity, you would lose your status. You could be deported, you could have an exclusion order. From there on, you can also get banned. Not only you, but even if your family and they're applying for permanent residence applications later on, even they would not be able to do that, because you, being their family member, are inadmissible to Canada. Even if you're a permanent resident and you get involved in an activity which again is seen as uh, unlawful, again it can directly impact your citizenship application. So just be aware of these things, when something like this happen, and always be true to your own intention. Why did you come to Canada in the first place? Okay. Some of you have come from wherever you're coming from to Canada because you thought Canada is more peaceful. This is a country which is more inclusive. It is more accepting of your differences, whether it's religious, whether it's from different countries, different nationalities, different languages, different ethnic backgrounds. It's inclusive. It's willing to accept everything and allows you to sort of live peacefully and live in harmony. So be true to your intent, and make Canada the way it is, or rather help Canada be the way it is being always, in the true Canadian spirit. And that's basically what I would like to say. And that's just about it. This one was a long session for today. We don't really go on with this one, but because there was so much to talk about with regards to that new strategy which has come up, because it indicates so many changes that are on the horizon. One thing is for sure: job offers is going to become a big deal. Not only that, it wasn't. If you're inside Canada, job offer is a big deal. If you're outside Canada, job offer is even a bigger deal. If you're looking for any other options, French is going to be another one big option that you will be thinking of. If you're looking to come to Canada as an international student, because that is your pathway for permanent resident, do it. But plan. A lot of international students who come to Canada are not planning. They are here and they think now that they're here, they're international students, so then they will study and then they will figure it out. No, don't do that. From the day one that you have arrived here, even before that, you should know your plan. You should know what you're planning to do. how many years you will study, what will you study. After that, what kind of a job you need to find. Don't wait to find a job only after you have completed your studies. Start looking for the job on day one. Start building that relationship with your employer so that when the time comes, you are able to talk to the employer, get the job offer, get the PNP option, get the LMIA if the employer is willing to do that for you. But these things you need to be aware of, prepare, plan. No longer is the pathway of international student to Canada a safe pathway to become permanent resident. No, it will not. It's not going to happen. I've just shown you the numbers. There are 1 million people, 1 million plus people, more than 1 million people who are international students, foreign workers, postgraduate work permit holders, their spouses, who are all now in the pool wanting to become permanent residents. So if you are one of them, your fight or your competition is against all those 1 million, not for people who are outside Canada, okay, but with amongst all those 1 million plus people. So you need to make sure that you get that important job offer, you get that important additional points that you need to. You identify which stream you're eligible in, you identify what program is going to work better for you or best for you, and then make sure you take advantage of the program. Always keep your ears to the ground, always keep yourself updated until you become permanent resident. This journey hasn't ended yet. So as I say, story abhi baki hai. So I do not know our story baki hai ki nahi, but this journey is still ongoing. So make sure you are up to date with these things and able to take advantage of when those things that are going your way happens. I know we've gone a bit long today, but as I said, because there was so much to talk about, I'm going to just take a very few questions because, to be very honest, I need to rush with something else after this session. So let's take. There are a lot of these questions which I've already addressed today, and let's see. It's been more than 3 months since my provincial AOR. That's the meaning something is wrong with my application. No, nothing is wrong with your application. It's just that. So I'm not sure your provincial AOR, you mean that you have submitted to Ontario or you've submitted to IRCC. If you've submitted to Ontario, then just know that Ontario is taking a lot of time in processing the nominations. If you've submitted to IRCC, then know that the first 2 months, they're taking as it is 2 months to issue the AOR. But you've already received your AOR. You've received your provincial AOR. So I'm not really sure if you're talking about the nomination process or the permanent residence process. If you're talking about the nomination process, then know that nominations are taking time. If you're talking about the permanent residence process, then know that it is a 6 months average processing time anyways. So yeah, give it some time. Just relax. Don't worry about it. Please revert, how much do you charge to check PR application documents? Well, you can always head out to our website. And on our website, you'll be able to find out all the charges that we charge. And you're most welcome to drop an email to us, and my team will guide you further as to how much we charge and what we can do with your application. Okay. Both my new postgraduate work permit extension and my spouse's visitor are in process. If I receive ITA this week, can I accept it? Okay, both are restoration application, and we are now without status but applied within 90 days. Yes, absolutely. You can accept your application. In your application, if you get an ITA, mention the status and mention what's happening with your other ongoing applications, and you will be absolutely fine. No problem. I received 00 LMIA in 2021. Immediately applied for work permit, which is still awaited. Please advise my approximate time in which application will be processed. I can't give you an approximate time because, as you have seen, the backlogs are still humongous. There are nearly 300,000 work permit applications in process. So that's a big number, to be very honest. At this point of time, I mean, I knew there was about 1 year processing time, but you can also raise, if your LMIA is still, I don't think your LMIA will be valid anymore. It should have been valid only for 6 to 9 months. I think it's already expired. But what you can do is you can raise a request with the processing office to check what's happening with them. But apart from that, unfortunately, there is no specific timeline that I can offer for you. The tier system is set to start by November 2022, which includes training, education, experience, responsibility. Does this highlight give any advantage? What do you suggest on this? It does not give any advantage to candidates immediately. Of course, with the new tier system, 16 new occupations will be added. With those 16 new occupations being added, it will be an advantage to them for sure, because now they will be able to apply not only within the Express Entry, but also to the provincial nominee programs that are linked to Express Entry. So that would be the advantage for them. Apart from that, CRS code still rules. If you enough CRS score, and if you just have that knock code which is eligible, then yeah, you'll just be in the pool, and that's about it. Is it necessary that some sort of deductions need to be made from our salary? The thing is, in India, low income people don't have to pay tax, so no deductions. No, there is no such requirement that deductions have to be in your salary if you're not in Canada, at least. And as long as you're able to prove that your employment was genuine, you were paid a salary, you have proof of having received the salary, then you are absolutely fine. There is no requirement for deductions. Not received round 2 email yet for postgraduate work permit extension, but there is an option to update address in IRCC account. Should we update address without waiting for email? Yes, you can absolutely update the address if you have that option available to you. Do that. Do the MPs help only with timeline of people from their province, or is it okay to ask for help from India? Well, in most cases, MPs would be inclined to help you only if you are in their province or even within their riding. Anybody outside, they basically have no incentive to help them, but you can always approach and ask. I've applied for TR to PR on the basis I applied for work permit extension. In that case, if my application gets rejected, it means that my work permit application will be rejected. If your work permit application is already approved, because your work permit application or extension is not given to you on the basis that your TR to PR will be approved. It is given to you so that you have a bridging time. So while you are waiting for your application to be processed, you can continue working. That is the reason an extension or a TR to PR work permit has been given to you. In most cases, if your work permit gets approved, hopefully that should happen before your TR to PR application is processed. In that case, you can continue working because you now have a work permit, and you can continue working until the validity of that work permit, regardless of whether your TR to PR application is approved or refused. I have received my LMIA last week. Do I need to mention on my work visa application that I plan to apply for EE? Secondly, do I need to mention in my EE application that I've applied for a work visa? No, there is no such requirement at all. In your work permit application, simply talk about your work, simply talk about the fact that how you are qualified to perform that jobs and roles and responsibilities. What you will do in future with regards to EE is of no concern at that point of time. How to apply for judicial review for refused study permit application. Also, what are the lawyer fees? I have seen it too high, like 2,000 to 4,000. Can I get a lawyer for around 500? Okay, judicial review process can only be done by Canadian immigration lawyer. I am not the one. I am not a Canadian immigration lawyer, or neither can I guide you or tell you about it. I don't think you will get a lawyer for $500 for sure. And if you have seen fees of 2,000 to 4,000, that is not high. That is quite low. So you need to set your expectations right from what you expect from a Canadian immigration lawyer and what the job and task would be. So the fee that you're looking at is not at all low. It's not at all high. It's actually on the lower side of things. I prefer no TR to PR. Actually, we don't need two separate criteria for PR. Well, it's a matter of opinion. I'm sure a lot of people would like to disagree with that because they were expecting and hoping for a TR to PR. But yeah, I mean, there would be changes. There are going to be changes for sure. Now, obviously, some people are going to be happy about it, and a lot of people are not going to be happy about it. But that's how the game is always played, right? These kind of systems, these kind of programs, these kind of processes, they cannot make everybody happy. At the end of the day, people forget Canadian permanent residence is not their right. It's a privilege. It's not something which you are going to say it's unfair because I didn't get it. No, because it's not your right. It's just being given to you as a privilege. So don't take it for granted to start with, number one. And number two, they can never make everybody happy. Okay. And at the end of the day, Canada will do what is in Canada's interest, what they need to achieve for their own economy, for what they want to achieve for their own society, what the political agenda is. It is never going to be with your perspective in mind. It is always going to be with Canada's perspective in mind. So the sooner you understand, the sooner you accept it, the better it will be for you and for your own plan, for your own way of figuring out the best process that will be working for you. I'm from Surrey, April this year on super visa. What should I do to get a work permit? Well, if you're on a super visa, then in order to get a work permit, you need to get an LMIA. You need to get an LMIA, or you need to find a job which is LMIA exempt, and then you probably would be able to, apply for a work permit for that. I was invited to apply. I've been in Canada for the last 6 months. Last PCC from my home country was dated for March 1. I came to Canada March 14. Is it still valid? Well, because the PCC was issued to you before you came to Canada, it basically means it does not include your entire duration of stay in your country, and hence it is not valid. You should apply for a new PCC while being outside that country. What happens to Bridge Open Work Permit if your PR application is rejected? Will it be valid? Can we keep working on Bridge Open Work Permit till it expires despite the fact that your PR application is rejected? Once a Bridge Open Work Permit is approved and you have it, you can continue working regardless of your PR application. Even if your PR application is refused, rejected, because you have a Bridge Open Work Permit, you can continue working until the validity of your work permit. There is no problem with that. All right, I am just gonna look at one more question, which I think was a super chat. I think I missed that. I worked remotely for my previous employer in India after reaching Canada on TR for a month. Now I'm about to submit EAPR. Does having worked on an Indian payroll from Canada impact my PR application in any way? No, it does not. If you are working for an employer outside Canada and you are paid by them while you are in Canada, it doesn't matter. There is no impact. You can absolutely don't have to worry about that aspect because it was not part of your Canadian employment. It was not part of you entering the Canadian labor market. All right. I think there's one more question that it looks like I've missed it. In your opinion, which is the best province for international students in terms of PR prospects? Okay, good question. I'm quite biased towards the Atlantic province, and the reason why I'm biased towards the Atlantic provinces is for the reason that not only do they have individual PNP programs, a lot of those programs are not point based, so you're not competing with others because of the points. They are simply that you complete this criteria and you can apply for nomination. That's a big factor. And very importantly, you also have the option of applying under the Atlantic Immigration Program. Okay, so you have multiple options there. You can apply under the Atlantic Immigration Program. You can apply under the PNP program itself, and that gives you some backup. That gives you some options. And also there are a lot of NOC that they accept. Because it is Atlantic Immigration Program, then you can also apply under the NOC. And in some cases, in some provinces, there might also be a NOC availability in terms of the criteria. So, in my opinion, the Atlantic provinces is definitely has an advantage. Also because not too many people there, so so competition is less, and it sort of helps you. Well, everybody, thank you so much. I really appreciate your joining in today. It's always nice connecting with you. Do go through the video again if you wish to, and as we have discussed about what's happening in the field of Canadian immigration or what changes are expected in the field of Canadian immigration. I know as far as express entry scores are concerned, a lot of people are still concerned. In my opinion, I expect October to see the scores going below 500. That's the expectation. Of course, everything being the way they are in terms of the invitations keep getting increased. Anybody below 480 should start looking at options. Even with the 470s range, you should be okay, considering or high 470s. Again, depending on how many invitations are being issued. Towards the early part of next year, there might be an option for 470s. But anybody below 470, I don't see a chance at all at this point of time in express entry. Unless the category-based draws will start. And how categories-based draws will hash out, we don't know. A lot of unknown there, a lot of speculation there. We know category-based draws will definitely come. But who would they give advantage to? Would it be in Canada? Would it be outside Canada? Would it be program specific only with certain other attributes? How many types of permutations, combinations are they going to apply? We don't know. And that is what leaves it all open to, or as I said, speculation. But if you can take up French as a second language, it is going to greatly help you. So do consider doing that. And well, I hope you achieve your dreams. And that's the only way that you can make it happen is by working towards it and progressing towards it. So thank you so much for joining it. Take care, stay safe, and I'll see you next time.